that I noticed that when I first started doing this work that the data seemed to fall into three broad categories that I was able to identify based on the length of time before the language started showing up. And so I defined the categories as immediacy data or short-term data or long-term data. And the long-term data was way out there. It was from 19 months onward. The short-term data is from 4 months to end of 19 months. And the immediacy data is from today out through the end of 4 months, but really 3 weeks as its most effective area. In any event, though, I ended up with a gap in my data sets that just started occurring, as far as I could tell, naturally. And that gap appears about, in our projection model space, it starts showing up about March 20th or so in 2012, and then doesn't appear to end in terms of a gap until about May of 2013. And I don't have a solid explanation for it. We have some theories, and we're basically running some tests relative to what's going on in the external world. So, for instance, because the data comes on in, and basically they're all just words that sort out to archetypes. The archetypes are associated with emotional or emotional characteristics that provide temporally effective clues. We're able to say that there appears to be something that may impact all of humans or enough of humans that we won't have anything close to the normal level of internet usage that we're enjoying now, and that something may show up in the early part of 2012 and extend all the way through to May of 2013. That is as a statement is an operating assumption that we're working to discredit or refute at the moment.
Sure.
Simply because that's how we have to approach this, is have a postulate and see if we can't disprove it and then find another postulate, etc.
So that would mean then the data gap is not reached until summer, probably 2012.
Summer of 2012 proper, yeah. And now, of course, we're getting the warnings from NASA about the solar activity. Plus, we're actually seeing evidence that, you know who Patrick Garrell is?
No, I don't know, no.
Oh, okay. You should research him and get him on your show. He's a Belgian. His last name is Gerryl, G-E-R-Y-L, I believe.
Sure.
And he's written a book on how to survive 2012. And his theory is that basically a quantum level occurrence will arise from the sun, which will cause a molecular pole flip and a magnetic pole flip and a crustal shift of the planet in 2012, which of course would certainly disrupt internet usage, no question about it. If we all go whizzing around at a few hundred miles an hour, everybody's going to get disrupted for a while. But he has some mathematics that are proving themselves out, and we had a recent example of that with the August 1 solar whatever. They still haven't named that event that occurred on August 1. And that was predicted. And of course, the more your theory allows you to make predictions, and the more predictions that arise as a result of your theory being and that actually show up, the more the higher the chance that your theory is accurate. And so one of his predictions is that based on you have to understand that the sun has this inherent angular momentum problem. And the angular momentum problem is basically that you're standing there, if you're the sun, and you've got a bunch of strings going out from your hands as you spin around. And these strings are of various lengths and have weights attached at the various ends. And so the weights are relatively small compared to you. Some of the weights are only 2 or 3 ounces perhaps, but there's a number of them, and they're out at the end of very long strings, and so they still form a lot of angular momentum. And so you're not going to be able to spin yourself around and keep your arms in a nice stable state. And that's actually what's happening to the sun. The sun's equator is being yanked around by the magnetics, by the weight, if you will, the angular momentum imparted by the planets. And the equator of the sun spins faster than its north or south pole. And every 87 days, the equator of the sun takes a lap on that north or south pole. And this induces winding, very much like winding on a ball of yarn. And in our case, the sun has been winding up all these magnetics within itself for just about 26,000 years. And apparently, every so often, these windings get to the point where the sun just can't take it anymore, and it pops off with this giant shakeout, if you will, of all that inherent magnetic energy, and it causes all kinds of problems for all the planets. And that's in a nutshell, that's Patrick Garrell's theory based on some good understanding he has of the Mayan calendar and a lot of the Mayan text, including those codices that are available to us in Dresden and in Madrid. In any event, though, the theory says that this extra lap that you get by the equator going around faster than the sun, that it takes about 87 days. And that over time you build up a lot of these, and it's like putting too much tension on your ball of yarn. Something's got to give. If Garrell is correct, then we should be able to make some predictions about what's going to happen to the sun relative to these extra windings. And sure enough, he's made some predictions. One of them came true on August 1, and then the next date to look for is 87 days in the future from that, or on or about October 27th or 28th, we should see another solar event that mainstream science will not be able to quite wrap their befuddled little mind around. And if that's the case, then we'll know not only the quantitative elevation in the episode, but also the precise timing. This is key because if one were of an opinion that when the sun does its big kawump in 2012, and one was of the opinion that one wanted to go to the effort to try and avoid that, and a way to do that would be to be on the other side of the planet from that kawump when it happens, and this will allow you to calculate that.
Right. So basically what we're saying is in 2012 we're going to have major disruption to internet and all other kind of things like internet and radio waves, all this kind of stuff.
Correct. It may be at a minimum, it may be a giant EMP, electromagnetic pulse emanating from a coronal mass ejection that could take down a significant portion of the planetary electrical infrastructure down to the level of local electronics even, correct. At a small level. It could be really nasty in the sense it could be a giant flare-up that actually would have some level of solar stuff coming down through our atmosphere and burning great hunks of the Earth. We just don't know.
But by your the collection of your data, though, the good news is that apparently there isn't anything that's going to be termed as life-threatening in 2012.
No, you're incorrect.
Sorry. Okay.
My data with the gap, the level of resumption after the gap is on the order of a thousandth or smaller part.
Okay. It's just I thought I was reading the good news is that the planet is not at risk from any events manifesting in 2012 or beyond. Repeat, the planet is not at risk.
Yeah, the planet isn't at risk. The Earth will still be there, but not necessarily humans.
Sure, okay, with you. Okay.
Sorry about that. I have a very acerbic wit, and you just need to be aware of that. I think I was being extremely sarcastic. Planet Earth will be just fine, thanks.
Yeah.
But none of the fleas, including ourselves, are likely to share that opinion.
Well, okay, thanks very much. That puts my mind at rest now. We need to start planning for the future, certainly.
Yeah, it's a waste of time. Yeah, all that planning for the future, retirement, any of that, no, blow it off.
Definitely, yeah. So, did I mention Terra Entity? Aye.
Yeah, the Terra Entity. Okay, basically what I did when I first started getting back the data, it was in just such huge volumes, we're talking tens of millions of words, that I had to start sorting them out into larger groups around certain archetypes. And so I sliced and diced the data to produce what I called entities. And one of the entities that naturally seemed to fall out was around the planet underneath our feet. And so I just named that the Terra entity. and did a lot of my programming in Latin, and I've studied Latin, so I have a tendency to use Latin so to avoid certain ambiguities. But then, as a spoken language, it starts also having other ambiguities. When they say terror and they're actually saying it as terra, we've got issues.
Yeah, yeah. The planet has got issues. Um, am I right in saying that the process that you used predicted the oil spill, the BP oil spill?
Yeah, yes, it came back for us as a descriptor about a year in advance of oil volcano with radioactivity associated with it. And I thought, see, here's the problem. My data comes back, and we've got a really good handle on something at a high archetype level. We knew there was going to be some kind of disruption with oil that was going to resemble a volcano, that was going to be the focus of everybody's attention for months, and that was going to cause certain problems, and that it was going to flow towards the southeast relative to where I am, because that's where all the directions are. And we had a number of these archetypes correct. But the problem is that we started an archetype, we're starting at like the top of the pyramid, and all of the good juicy stuff is in the detail layers down at the bottom. But that the detail layers are just so chock full of stuff, most of it erroneous or redundant or irrelevant, that we frequently pick it wrong. So here we are in the vast chaos of human civilization. We've got this ongoing problem between the Israelis and the Iranians being foisted on us by the powers that be, the corporate masters. And so I had erroneously assigned the oil volcano because they were temporally associated, temporally linked. I had erroneously assigned it as one of the results to arise as a result of the Israelis attacking the Iranians. So we had a lot of the details accurate about it, but in going through, getting down to that level of detail, my monkey mind, as I said, couldn't make any sense of just an oil volcano sprouting up somewhere. So it was the only way that could occur is if the Israelis somehow nuke an oil site, as part of their mistake of attacking Iran.
Sure.
Make sense?
Yeah, because you also talk about the U.S. military surrounding Iran as well.
Correct. And we have a number of, so see, there again is our issue as we get to the detail level, or actually once we drop below the tertiary or that level, the third or fourth level of supporting aspects, we're starting to get into an area where you might have 20 or 30,000 words within our model space that are associated with a pretty good archetype that you think you understand. And then you've got to get a limited number of those words, those 20 or 30,000 words that are associated with it at the detail level, to get a flavor of what the forecast actually is. So, we understand now that frequently we will be quite correct at the archetype level, and we will even get an amazing prescient view of some of the language that will be emanating and actually manifesting. And I'll give an example in a second. And B, that we can be quite wrong at the detail level, off in some screwy way totally. And one of the examples that we have at an archetype level is that some time before the event, I had said that it was going to be a blue flue, and it spelled it as F-L-U-E, as in flew in a chimney. And so I was describing this whole thing within the language showing up, and the label for it was the blue flu, but that was also going to be associated with people's health, and that the people's health would be associated with plague-like conditions. And now, after all this time, the mainstream media is actually using these terms of blue flu, spelled F-L-U, as though pneumonia sickness, but now also associating it with the blue plague, and also associating all this with the Gulf states, etc. So the language itself is showing up some months after we put it out, but not exactly specifically in the way that I'd said. But like I say, we got some of these staggeringly right, and then are wrong on about half of them.
Yeah, because you talk about shaky glumps, south rises, current sea coverage, air holes and masses, blue flu, island stew, flu and flu with an EW, and summer blues. The recent 8.8 earthquake in Chile, which was on 27th of February of this year, is one of 6 such forecasts within the data set for 2010. The Terra entity has 7 in total,